program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you for coming to the May 14th of 2018 Planning Commission meeting. If you do intend to speak tonight, there are yellow slips of paper on the counter at the back of the room. Please fill those out and then hand it to Ryan when you come up to speak. Please introduce yourself with your name and your address. If you do have cell phones, please put them on silent or turn them off so they won't interrupt the meeting. And then we do attempt to conduct our public hearings in a relatively informal manner within the constraints that we must deal with the issues that are before us in an orderly and businesslike fashion. We give the applicant an opportunity to speak first after the city has made their presentation, and then others are allowed to permitted to speak once. We do request that everyone restrict their comments to the issue directly before us to avoid unnecessary repetition and be prudent in their use of time. We want to make sure we have adequate time to deal as carefully with the last item on the agenda as we do the first. And the first item on our agenda tonight is an election of officers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, we do need to have a new chairperson. Thank you very much for your service to this point as a chairperson, and so we do need to make that change here tonight. Please do not leave, as we still need you as a member on the Planning Commission. So with that, I'll defer to standard protocol for taking nominations and moving forward that direction. Thank you.
So we'd be looking for nominations for President first, Chair.
I'd like to nominate Jamie Radabaugh as Chair.
I'll second.
Jamie, do you accept? Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion before us. All those in favor? Aye. Good, you can take my chair now. Then we need a vice chair. I'd be looking for a nomination.
Nominate Craig.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do you accept?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion before us. Any other nominations? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. And then what else do we need? We do definitely need a secretary
Yes.
officially.
Correct.
Okay, so we'd be looking for a nomination for a secretary. Commissioner,
I'd like to nominate Terry Patterson.
we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other nominations? Jerry, do you accept?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. So there is our new slate of officers. Now, do I get off this seat tonight?
Yes, if you don't mind. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Sure. Can I do the certificate?
Yes, let's do that first.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I don't know if you want to do this one at a time or together. I'll leave it up to you. If you want to come up together, you certainly can. If you want to do it one at a time, you can do that too. You can come all the way forward if you want to.
I have things to say.
All right. Okay, well, you can sit back there if you want. All right. David, it's your choice where you'd like to be. Okay. All right, so first I have a certificate of appreciation which states, whereas David Klinkhammer has served the citizens of the City of Eau Claire as a Plan Commissioner from April 18th, 2017 to April 17th, 2018, and whereas he has been a strong advocate of comprehensive planning, site planning, city and riverfront beautification, and neighborhood revitalization, and whereas his professional knowledge and experience has been a keystone of the Planning Commission, and whereas his thoughtful and detailed review of development proposals has encouraged higher quality development for the community, Now therefore, the City Plan Commission of the City of Eau Claire hereby shows its appreciation as well as the appreciation of the city staff and the citizens of the city to David Klinkhammer for his contributions, leadership, and service to the City of Eau Claire. Congratulations. Okay, Kathy, would you like, you'll stay there? Okay. Certificate of Appreciation. Whereas Kathy Mitchell has served the citizens of the City of Eau Claire as a Plan Commissioner from April 17th, 2012 to April 17th, 2018, and whereas she has been a strong advocate of comprehensive planning, site planning, city and riverfront beautification, and neighborhood revitalization, and whereas her professional knowledge and experience has been a keystone of the Plan Commission, and whereas her thoughtful and detailed review of development proposals has encouraged higher quality development for the community, now therefore the City Plan Commission of the City of Eau Claire hereby shows its appreciation as well as the appreciation of the city staff and the citizens of the city to Kathy Mitchell for her contributions, leadership, and service to the City of Eau Claire. And I'm going to walk forward, okay?
Do you mind if I say a word or two? I want to thank you very much for this, and I want to throw it back at the commission. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to miss you.
I want to throw it back at you and just remind us, let us think for a minute of the great work we've done these last years. Some of us, all 6 of the years, but certainly during that time, the comp plan, the neighborhood revitalization task force, and all that spawned for the older neighborhoods, and particularly Randall Park. The zoning code changes that we made as regards to parking and even the sign code. And just think of the construction that has gone on in this city in the last few years, and it's all come through here. We go back, some of us, to the Confluence Project and the parking ramp and the large residential developments. So I'm very proud of the work, and I hope that you are too. And with the exception of the need for police protection one time, I've enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you.
Thank you both. We do appreciate the service. So on to item number 3 for recommendation, rezoning from R1A to R1. Preliminary plat, 8th edition.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We'll say in advance, if I refer to the chair as Madam Chair, I apologize. So nothing personal, just habit. So apologize for that.
That's for sure.
Ahead of time. So the item before you this evening, actually 2 separate items. One area or property or project, I should say. 2 separate requests. One, a rezone, and the second, a preliminary plat. The rezone is the area identified on the overhead here for you. It's a request to rezone property from R1A, which is the low-density, single-family, unsewered or non-sewered, to R1, which is the balance of the property to the west and most of the property in the general vicinity. And this location here is at the northwest corner of East Princeton Avenue and LaSalle Street. The applicant, Real Land Surveying, on behalf of Hasselwander Brothers, Inc., is proposing to rezone this property at this northwest corner of approximately 1.42 acres as part of a larger project of approximately 6 acres that would include 27 single-family residential lots. Again, this is a pretty straightforward request to bring this piece of the property, this project, into compliance with the balance of the property. Staff does believe it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and compatible with the surrounding development, and therefore staff does recommend approval. Here's a aerial showing the area in question a little bit more specifically with regards to the surrounding properties. If I may, I will also give brief information on the other item, which is the preliminary plat. Plat itself, again, is looking at 27 lots. This is on the south end of Princeton Valley Golf Course and the detention pond, or detention basin related to that. Should note that outlot designated for stormwater detention or flood easement will be required to be shown on the final plat. The topographic map shows a little bit more clearly what that's referring to in this general area. But again, it has not been identified yet on the preliminary plat, as you see here, but will need to be identified as part of the final plat. So there are a number of conditions along with the engineering analysis and report that would go with that. And beyond that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Allen? And do excuse me if I call you Mr. Tufty.
That's only fair, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I should also note, I apologize, that the city is in the process of deeding this property over. There's a little notch there you see at the southwest corner of the overall project. That's underway in order to eliminate that from city ownership. It's an old lift station, and then kind of square this this corner off to fill that in. So, sorry, just wanted to add that in here as well as I saw that visual, if there are any questions on that part. Thank you.
Any questions? Is the applicant here?
I got one.
Oh, sorry, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Allen, for your presentation. And I did have a question in light of the fact that I just read our draft plan for our parks and open spaces and recreation plan. And there was noted in there that this area of town doesn't have any like public parks. So I was wondering if there was any discussion with the applicant about a public park space in the area and how that could fit into a larger vision for this area of town.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gregor, a very good question. That is one, as you know, in this area has come up in the past. This case as well was not directly addressed, since there really is limitations in terms of what the city can require or request of that. But that's certainly something that, again, as you'll see in our plans and preferences, to see something like that. But in this case, that was not provided.
Any other questions? Doesn't look like it.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward, sir?
Good evening. My name is Neil Haswander. I reside at 3705 Freedom Drive here in Eau Claire. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions? Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hasselwander, I appreciate you being here to answer questions. I was wondering, did you have any discussion with city staff or have a vision for parks in this area in relation to, I know you have a lot of other development in the area as well, so I imagine you've thought about it a bit. I just wanted to check and see what your thoughts are.
We have not had any immediate discussions on it. We do have other potential properties that we could consider potentially something like that.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to speak on this item?
Good evening. I'm Julie O'Brien, and I live at 2975 West Princeton Avenue. So I'm part of this development, but further in. I guess concerns that I have as a citizen of Eau Claire and watching the growth and development is, number one, Northwoods Elementary School. We just got Highclere. Highclare's putting in, 65 houses. A lot of them are being built right now. That's bringing in a lot more children. Northwoods Elementary School is full. I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know how much you work with the school district to kind of say, where should we be developing more? Because we do have lots of land in Eau Claire that's being developed. So I think that's a big concern. The other concern I have is LaSalle is a horrible street. People speed, it's supposed to be 30 miles an hour. I can tell you any given morning, I'm pulling out of East Princeton, they're going at least 40. Now you're going to have at least, 15 houses that are going to be backing out onto LaSalle. So I do have a little concern there. The other was getting onto the North Crossing. How many homes do we have in that whole area? And how do we get to the North Crossing? We come to LaSalle and we turn on to McKinley. If we have anything going on, then we have to go way up and around, and then it's on to Peterson and back and around. But we're really confined, and you've got a lot of cars coming through that area and onto that one intersection. And with Highclere adding on to that whole intersection, I think it's a concern that the city needs to look at. And that. A lot of the neighbors were just concerned about the extra traffic, and also how are we going to handle the children there. And yes, we would love to see a playground, and I know you know there's area under the power lines, but I know it's not an ideal place to put a swing set. So that's those are concerns that have been brought to me from neighbors in the area and from myself. Let's see if I got anything else on here. And they are going to be single homes, because that was the other concern. We didn't want duplexes.
Yeah, it would be an R1, which would be single-family dwellings.
Okay, because that was a big concern. And then also, what was the width of these? Because looking at this little map, I can't read it. And we couldn't tell if it was like
John, can you help
60
her?
wide.
The answer?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, yes, 65, for the most
65.
part, along LaSalle there. On Gooder and East Princeton would be a little bit larger in some places, but
Okay.
65 average.
And they go in about, 100 and,
About 140,
140?
65 by 140.
Okay. So those are some things that we're really concerned about over there, is extra traffic, overloading at the schools, and getting out of our area. Because if you're trying to get out of Princeton between 7:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning, it's a bottleneck. And once these families start moving into Highclere, it's going to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Anybody on the commission, questions for the speaker? I don't see any, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else that would like to make a comment on this item? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we'll be looking for a motion.
I'll move approval to do both items with staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any comments? Terry?
Just wondering if Mr. Gensko could address the traffic. The report says there wouldn't be significant impact.
Our traffic engineer has looked at this. Her assessment of this development is that it would add 20 to 30 additional vehicles during the peak hour. So that's typically for a residential area, that'll be in the morning during the commute time. So 20 to 30 during the hour.
And
Her assessment was that it was not a significant impact.
that also included the impact from the other development that just went in.
Yes, they
west
look
of
at
there.
all the existing development, all the approved development, and then they factor in potential raw land that could be developed when they look at that.
So even, there may be some tweaks needed at the North Crossing and the entrance, but other than that, it looks okay.
Yeah, could be some signal timing or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? I'm not seeing any. So let's call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion is approved for recommendation to council. Next item is street vacation, Marston Avenue. Mr. Jenskow.
The city, our engineering department has received a request. Actually, the initial request was to clarify the status of that right-of-way, and as we did our research, the request became a request to vacate that right-of-way. It's an unimproved right-of-way. It was platted way back as part of, and I'm going to forget the name of the plat, Chapman and Thorpe's first edition. It's this little part up here. It was originally named Roland Street, and then eventually became Marston. And it's not uncommon in a plat like this, when you get to the end of the plat, that you stub each one of the right-of-ways anticipating future development. At some point, though, and I'm going to zoom out to the aerial here of that area, at some point, Forest Hill Cemetery expanded and came to this area too, and absorbed what on this plat were these lots here. At the time that happened, then our records then actually showed the right-of-way actually going into, as being part of the park too. As I looked at our plat books back to at least 1951, and by then we were not showing that as a right-of-way anymore. Although we have got no record of when that was vacated, and neither one of these parcels show the vacated right-of-way as part of their legal description, as is often the case. So the clarification then, well, a fence was built right down the middle of it. Half of it is being used as part of the cemetery. Half of it is being used as the driveway to access this parcel to the south. So the request is just to clean this up by vacating it, allowing it to be the private driveway for the property to the south, and reverting to the cemetery for the north half. So there are no public utilities in there. There may be some private utilities that occupy that, although I don't think so. This would not impact any future traffic or transportation or utility needs. There's actually quite a bit of slope here. This road is quite a bit higher than down here, and so we don't see any future impacts to the city by this vacation. Our standard vacation language before the council includes language to retain utility easements. So when this goes to the council at their next meeting, there will be a companion resolution to release those utility easements as well.
Sounds great. Any questions for Mr. Jenskow? Terry?
Was that initially acquired by easement, where it would revert back to the abutting property owners, or would this have to be sold as excess right-of-way?
No, what happens when a right-of-way gets platted like this, because it was part of the plat, then it goes to parcels that are in the plat, so it will revert half and half. In some cases, like on this side where there's a right-of-way but nothing's platted on the other side, that right-of-way would revert into the plat. So there the whole right-of-way would. But in a case like this, it goes half and half to each side.
So neither the cemetery nor the abutting property owner who's using it as driveway would have to purchase this, then it would just automatically go to them?
It just reverts to them,
Okay.
yes.
Any additional questions? Okay. Thank you. So this is, the city is the applicant, but it is public hearing, I believe, right, Mr. Allen? So, this is a public hearing, so if there's anybody who'd like to make any comments?
I'm not sure that this is a hearing. I think you're making a recommendation to the city council.
Okay.
They will hold a public hearing next Monday.
They'll pull the public hearing, okay, so. Thanks. So I guess we're looking for a motion. Commissioner Peters.
I'll make a motion to vacate the right-of-way.
I'll second. All right. Got a motion and a second. Any comments? All right, looking, so we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries, recommendation of city council. Item number 5, what do we got? For recommendation, 2018-2022 Park, Open Space, and Recreation Facilities Plan.
Good evening. Tonight, we're asking for your recommendation on the update of the city's 5-year Park, Open Space, and Recreation Facilities Plan. The plan provides a short-term perspective about the city's parks and open space areas and updates our current plan that covers the period from 2013 through 2017. The plan is prepared in conjunction with the Parks chapter of our comprehensive plan, which reflects the long-range direction for city parks and open space areas within the city. I've been working with the staff from the Parks and Forestry Division and the Recreation Divisions on the update of this plan over the last 6 to 7 months or so in preparing this update. I'm going to provide a little bit of background on the plan itself, and then Jeff Pippinger, Director from our Community Services Department, is going to talk specifically about the projects that we have listed within the plan. The plan itself has several functions in terms of why we do a 5-year plan. First, it updates our division goals and policies that relates to parks and open space, recreation facilities, and then incorporates the policies from our comprehensive plan. Quite importantly, it provides an opportunity for staff to get together and discuss trends that are occurring within the city of Eau Claire in terms of how they relate to parks and recreation and how that relates to future needs for parks and recreation. Thirdly, it assists in the identification of projects that would be included in our 5-year capital improvement plan or projects that would be undertaken by staff as part of their operating budget. And then probably probably the most importantly is that it's a requirement when applying for a number of grant programs, particularly through the Wisconsin DNR through the stewardship program. The timing of the projects that are actually included in the plan in terms of when they would be addressed. First of all, the length of list that Jeff will be going through, we will not complete all of those in a 5-year period, but they do identify what we feel our needs are. But the timing of those projects are really determined by a number of factors. First is the city funding in terms of our 5-year capital improvement plans, what kind of funds would be budgeted for those. Also, in terms of the availability of grant funds, that's a key determinant in terms of whether a project might get moved up or down on a list depending on if grant funds are available. And then private fundraising. Over recent years, we've become more and more involved with groups that have raised funds for portions of projects such as like the soccer field complex or the Jeffers Road ball fields that have involved private fundraising, so those have moved those projects forward. Also, in terms of coordinating and timing with other projects, depending on bidding of different projects and things like that, we might be able to move a project into a particular bid project and move it up in the plan. And finally, in terms of changes in demographics or activity trends, if some activities become less important or more popular within the community, those will move these projects up or down also. The parks, the projects themselves, we classify the parks into different classifications, and we use the National Park and Recreation Administration classification system for parks, and all of our parks are classified into one of these categories. We do not use the play lot categories, so we're using these 6 categories of parks when we develop and plan for parks in terms of the neighborhood parks, urban parks, which typically are the ones more in our central core area, such as Wilson Park, Randall Park, University Park. Our community parks, such as Owen Park and Carson Park. Our special area facilities, these tend to be more facilities that typically have kind of one primary use, such as our soccer field complex or some of our ball fields. So they would fall into this category. Well, excuse me, except the soccer fields would fall into this special area facilities would be more like our dog parks and things like that. Then our athletic fields, and then our waterfront parkway areas. The plan itself is very similar to the 2013-17 plan, as it contains most of the same sections that we had back at that time. In fact, we've been doing this plan for the last 25 years, and the general format of the plan essentially has stayed the same over that time frame. Just wanted to touch upon a couple things within the inventory as part of the project, part of the plan update. We take a look at in terms of what our facilities are and compare that to what they were 5 years ago. This particular table here shows the acreages that we have in our park and open space area, where we classify that into the municipal or the city-owned parcels. Those that are owned and administered by the school district, but these would be the open space areas such as the playgrounds and athletic fields of the school district that a lot of times the city also has programs involved in, and then the facilities for the university. You can see as of currently we have 1,127 acres of parkland under the city jurisdiction. That's up about 100 acres from 5 years ago, and we had just a little over 1,000 acres. And the overall total here went up about 60 to 70 acres. What happened when I started doing some of the calculations for some of these areas, because of the advancements in our computer technologies, we're able to refine some of the acreages on some of our areas. And unfortunately, we found that we lost about 20 acres in Putnam Park due to technology. So otherwise, what we did see gains within our park areas. Some of the key areas that we saw gains over the last 5 years was the Carson Park Causeway, which was only 0.2 acres, but will be a real kind of gem along Half Moon Lake. The Cannery Park, 16.5 acres. The Sundet Dog Park, 9.5. The Keys Park, which is a park actually south of the city down on Double I and Lowell Creek Road, that was donated to the city about 5 years ago. That's a 90-acre parcel, actually 3 parcels that total 90 acres. And then we added Mount Washington to the list because that had not been on the list in previous years, even though that was something that the city has owned for a number of years. And then in terms of waterfront, trail acreage that we have, we added the trail section from the High Bridge northwest up to Folsom Street, which was about 9 acres. So we have this number of acres in greenway areas. And then in terms of lineal feet of pathway system, we added 4 sections of pathway system to the city along Short Street, east over by the High Bridge up to Folsom Street, the Cannery District Riverfront Trail that was just put in last fall, and then along Melby Street we added a trail system about 2 years ago. That brings our total up to 34.41 miles of trails, and that's compared to a little over 31 miles back in 2013. The parks that improvements that Jeff is going to talk about are broken into 3 different categories. One are the specific improvements for each park. Secondly are some site acquisitions that we would like to see going forward over the next 5 to 10 years. And then the third category are some just system-wide improvements that he'll mention also. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Good evening. A little bit of, I guess, the reason why we look at different projects that we have. We want to look at deficiencies and needs that we have in our parks. We have several parks, as Pat just pointed out, thousands of acres, and we want to make sure that we keep these up in the need of what our customers are looking for. Also, it's based upon the city's comprehensive plan and current conditions of the park, open space areas, and facilities. We also look at trends, policies, and standards to be considered when we determine what projects need to be done. Pat covered a little bit of this, factors impacting the timing of projects. Again, first and foremost, the availability of funding. And again, we're competing with all the general fund money that's supporting our police department, fire department, and street division. So we have to compete for that to do these projects. Grant funding, that's something that has become very big in community services. I don't believe there's a project that we're doing now that we're not looking around for some grant money to help us fund these projects. The timing of other capital improvement projects, certainly there's only so much money that we can spend in a year, so some of these projects will have to be timed in when it's a good time to bring them in to do the projects. Changes in recreational demands and needs. We're seeing, certainly trends. 20 years ago, adult softball was huge in Eau Claire. We're not seeing that anymore. That has gone by the wayside. But we're seeing other trends, soccer and the youth athletics and baseball and everything are coming up. And so those are becoming very popular. So we're trying to meet those needs as they come up. Opportunities to consolidate the bidding of projects. So if there's two projects that are similar, we can save some money in doing two projects at one time, we look at doing that. We work very closely with our engineering department. So if we're doing citywide projects and we're doing a paving project close to where we want to do a paving in the parks, we work together on that. And then also the priority and completion timeframes of the projects. We have to evaluate that to make sure that we keep what we need in the parks. Some of the proposed projects for the 2018-2022 projects. Boyd Park, we're looking at constructing a skate park. Again, many of these I'm going to talk about that we're looking at doing in the proposed is that we have public-private partnerships right now with these groups. They're fundraising for, in some cases, for all the cost of these projects. They raise the money in cash and then we'll construct it. The plus side is that the city will maintain these amenities. Even in those cases, we require them to hold some money for maintenance for us. Carson Park, another one, upgrades to the baseball park. We're working with a group with a public-private partnership to do the fundraising on that. Ferry Street, develop a boat launch and dog park. Currently, we're in the design phase of that. That will be something that will be coming to this group shortly. Sometime, my hope is by the end of this year that we'll have a design for you to look at and recommend approval. Forest Street, another public-private partnership on constructing the Veterans Tribute Trail. Again, that's another wonderful project that's going to link up our trails from the High Bridge down to Phoenix Park. And again, we're working with a group that's fundraising for that money. Hobbs Ice Arena, we need to replace the Akrovic floor. Again, that's we have 3 ice sheets. 2 are full-size ice sheets, and then we got 1 3/4 size. But the floor in the Akrovic is in need of replacement, so that is a project that we'll be working on within this next 5-year cycle. McDonough Park, another public-private partnership. Again, we're going to be looking at adding several different amenities, but one is that we're going to be looking at as an active aging amenities for some of us seasoned folks that can use a little bit less than that rigor of a high workout. This will get us to have us an amenity like that in one of our parks. And then the Northwest Community Park. Again, just recently we had a development that was approved, so now we're going to be getting access into that area on the northwest side of the city. It's basically a very wooded, natural area that we will be looking at doing the improvements and putting a parking lot in, putting restrooms and pavilion in that area that we will be able to start utilizing that beautiful land area. And then Sundet Park, Again, we'll be developing a dog park this year in that area. So that is still on this as proposed projects because we haven't completed it. Some of the conditions and trends that we look at, certainly when we develop our plan. In Eau Claire, we expect demand to continue to increase. We have more and more trail systems, more and more outdoor activities that we're seeing that there's that demand. We're going to have to continue to try to meet that demand for our customers. Competition for tax dollars will also increase, so we have to be creative. As I talked earlier, many of the projects that I talked before, we're doing public-private partnerships, where groups are fundraising for the amenities and then we're constructing it for them. Eau Claire's population is expected to continue to grow at about a 1% annual rate. Commercial and residential growth and annexations, we're expecting that to occur within this 5-year period. There's going to be a greater emphasis to improve the older city neighborhoods in the city. And again, we have parks within those areas, so we're going to have to make sure we keep up those amenities in those parks. Continuing with the trends and conditions, enrollment at CVTC and UW Eau Claire will remain steady. Downtown redevelopment and growth is expected to continue in the North Barstow and the Phoenix Park areas. Tourism will continue to grow, drawing more large numbers and creating demand for facilities. We're seeing record numbers of special events coming into the city. And it's exciting, but it's also a lot of work and it's a lot of stress and strain on our staffing. Senior citizen population will continue to increase, as I mentioned earlier. We all become more seasoned as we get older and we need different forms of activity. A number of people with the ability to pay and not pay will continue to increase, and we're going to have to be able to meet that need of both of those demographics. Some of the completed projects from the last 5 years, we keep record of these. Again, when we go through this is one of the plans that I'm always, looking back at. It's very proud to look at and go through and say, geez, we completed that, we completed this. And this is just a handful. This isn't everything, but the Carson Park, we replaced the main playground equipment in the Causeway project. Again, I drove through there the other day and there had to have been 40 people out there fishing off that causeway. And it's so much safer, it's wider. Kids are off on the side of the road, and so it was a great replacement, and it's a beautiful entryway into the park. Fairfax Park and the pool, we constructed new dugouts at the Fairfax baseball fields. Again, that was something we worked with the school district. They actually paid for all that materials and actually got in-kind donations from sponsors. We added play features, slides, and shade structures at the pool. Hobbs Ice Arena, we installed new dasher boards on the O'Brien rink, much needed. The old dasher boards had been in place for several years and were becoming dangerous, so we've replaced those as part of our completed projects. Jeffers Road Fields, constructed new baseball and softball fields, and the Miracle League field. Again, if you haven't been out to Jeffers Park, I would encourage you to go out there because it wasn't that many years ago. In fact, it was less than 4 years ago, it was just a barren field. And now we've got 3 softball fields, 2 baseball fields, and then a Miracle League field, which is truly a remarkable activity that we brought in for some of our special needs kids. Lakeshore Park, we constructed a fishing pier and skate plaza. Some additional completed projects, McDonough Park constructed 6 additional pickleball courts. Again, that's working with a private group that came in and did the fundraising for all that and basically handed the money over to us and we constructed it for them. Owen Park installed new park signs. Phoenix Park installed the new electrical service to the central portion of the park, which was much needed for events in the park. Pinehurst Park, we're improving the sledding, skating, snowboarding, and facilities. If you haven't been out there, the group that we're working with Outdoor More has actually put lighting out there. They've got trails. It's been a great addition to that area. And then we've also improved our recreational trail systems. The Waterways and Parks Commission recommended approval at their April 25th meeting with conditions. And the conditions, we actually added this already into the plan. They wanted to see completion of the History Walk markers in Phoenix Park, consideration of community gardens at Boyd and Cameron Parks, and then consideration of developing smaller scale dog parks in the vicinity of downtown. With that, Pat and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
That's a great job. Thanks. Any questions for either of our staff members here? Jeremy?
Go ahead,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Pippinger. I really appreciate this rundown of everything that's been accomplished, as well as what we have to look forward to here. I was wondering about, there was one project that I felt may be missing, and I know from some of the discussion that's occurred in our downtown with regard to public spaces and more the urban parks category, there was some discussion about doing a town square in between the public library and the city hall. And I know that's very much something that has to be explored with the private sector as well, considering there's a private parcel in between there. But in the 2001 downtown study that was done, there was kind of a vision for that, and I know that we've had discussions before in that regard, so I was wondering if that could be something we could at least include as something to study the feasibility of a town square between the library and city hall.
Sure. I'm not involved in those discussions, but I know that there has been discussions on that. But we can look at adding that into the plan.
Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, Mr. Pippinger, first of all, from somebody that grew up here and then left and came back, it's exciting what's happening here, and kudos to you and your department and everybody in the city that's been doing this. The Carson Park, when I looked at the report, the Carson Park, there's a fairly significant list other than the baseball field as well. There are replacements, some seating areas and that, I believe, over in the football field, if I'm correct. Where do you see the priorities and kind of the sequencing? And I recognize this all has to do with funding, but.
Yeah, that's a good question, because priority basing is going to be something important. Trying to pick, because we feel all these projects are very important, and to try to pick, but I think where it comes down to is the opportunities that we have. We are looking at doing a master plan for Carson Park with a lot of the changes that we're seeing just in the demands and demographics on what we're dealing with. We think that a master plan is something that we need for the park, and something that, quite honestly, depending upon what we do with the baseball field, if we put in a turf field, we can no longer put the bleachers on that part of the field. So we have to look at, perhaps a little bit different way of how we're working with the park. So master plan will help us do that, bringing in other stakeholders that can come in and say, hey, this is what we'd like to see. And again, as part of that public-private partnership that we would be looking at getting some assistance from some of those other agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Ms. Ebert.
Through the report, I don't see anything mentioned about Mount Simon Park. And I've got a question. The Babe Ruth fields that are up on the top there, are those owned by Babe Ruth, or are they leased by Babe Ruth League to the city, or how does that work?
Those are owned by the city. We
Okay.
have an agreement with Babe Ruth to use those. Again, they get priority scheduling, but other groups, if they want to go up there and use it when they're not being used, they can do that.
Okay. And then I know that the disc golf down below is very popular. Has there been any talk about adding an additional disc golf feature in any of the other parks to kind of accommodate the demand?
Yes, exactly. We, actually in the Cannery District,
Okay.
we do have a plan to look at putting some of that into the cannery, into that area. And we've had, again, we work with other groups, and they've come forth with ideas with the Southwest Community Park down by Lowe's Creek that they would like to, venture and look at something like that. Once we're ready to develop some of that area, again, we need some of those amenities in there, such as restrooms and a parking lot and things like that. But yeah, that's something that has been talked to us several times. And the Cannery District is something that we're looking at.
I think that would be very popular to put disc golf down there as long as they don't lose their little disc thingies in the river.
Right. Again, a lot of that is really conceptual, so hopefully, we're looking at all those types of possibilities on some of those new areas that we're going to be doing.
The only other thing on Mount Simon Park, and I happen to live up there, is that the area of the parking lot that is used for the boat launch and everything,
Yeah.
it could probably use a little bit of regrading.
I would agree.
And
I was down there a couple weeks ago.
yeah, it's a little bit potholy, and so that's, otherwise, I think it's good.
Well, thank you.
Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't want to be too nitpicky about things in here, but I wanted to maybe broaden the language on one point. It's page 34 of the plan, and there's where it's listing all of the ideas for different parks, and under Owen Park at the top of that page, it mentions acquiring property west of park for additional parking. And I was wondering if that language could maybe be broadened to say for additional parking or open space, because I think that there have been some conversations in that neighborhood about doing rain gardens and
Sure.
in some of the areas that already have had houses that were taken out, because a lot of that area is in the floodplain along First Avenue, of course. So I just kind of want to be flexible about it, and I think there's already a decent amount of parking there in my estimation, and the Owen Park lot was recently doubled in size, and so I want to, I guess, have the language be flexible about what that area could be used for. So
Certainly. I don't see a problem with that.
yeah, thank you.
Anybody else with questions? Commissioner Peterson? Okay, sorry. Okay, so are we looking for recommendations? Anyone, just a roll call or a motion?
A motion would be in order.
All right, so we're looking for a motion.
Like to make a motion to approve or to recommend the plan to the city council, but maybe with the conditions of the thoughts about opening up the language on Owen, the area west of Owen Park, as well as, having the study the feasibility of the town square. The folks are up for that.
Well, I think if we got a second in support, we can discuss. Looking for a second?
Thank you. I think the plaza is, I don't think it's in this category. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's part of the downtown plan and not a, certainly if it turns into something, that would be a park, but it's part of the downtown plan.
Okay, so we've got a motion but no second.
I'll second it with what we just covered regarding the plaza.
So we're removing the plaza from, so we'd be looking for Jeremy, is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's acceptable, yes.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. And we'd be looking for discussion. No discussion? All right, let's call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So that approval for recommendation, with this, I think we had a slight change in there. All right. Thank you, guys. That's a lot of good work, and it doesn't happen by accident. On to the next item, for approval, site plan, a 4-unit apartment on Menominee Street.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Commissioners, before you this evening is a request to approve a site plan of 4-plex, 14 bedrooms to be located at 914 and 916 Menominee Street. Here's a close-up of the area in question. It's the 2 lots here that are outlined. So these 2 existing residences would be removed to construct a proposed 4-plex as shown here. The zoning in this area is RM, which is mixed-use residential. The comprehensive plan shows this as medium and high-density housing. Should note in your packet there is a letter from the Historic Randall Park Neighborhood Association. It does provide a support for the proposal as submitted here this evening. Again, the applicant is requesting approval of the site plan. The parking, to walk through some of the specifics here, parking is identified to have and be required to have 13 stalls. That is what's being provided. One thing in particular I do want to note, you can see here how the property line of the north zigzags around a little bit. You can see it also on the area here. So there's a little difference between the two because the north property line, or lines actually between each of these properties, was professionally surveyed by the applicant. It confirmed some known deviations in the shared boundaries, as well as the absence of a formal alley. There is what I suppose, it's not a technical term, would be called an informal alley, for lack of a better term. But again, there is some shared existing shared access and some utilities between the subject properties here in the south along Menominee and those to the north, which then front Water Street. So access, it should be noted though that access to the Water Street properties, again from kind of the rear, south end of those properties, should not be materially impacted by the proposed redevelopment of these 2 properties, even again, for the fact that there is no formal alley separating those 2. You can see again a little bit more clearly here. The proposed access would remain to the south, kind of along the south line of that informal alley, which is located generally in this area. So there may be some curbing and such along the south part or portion of that shared access to the north, but again, should not materially impact those properties and their access to the rear of their properties. That being said, no grading or utility plans have been submitted at this time, so that is something that is requested and as a condition. Traffic, I know we always reference traffic in these situations. As identified by the engineering staff, traffic generated by the proposed development should not adversely impact traffic flow in the area. Again, since there are no new curb cuts being proposed, this is the existing area identified along 9th Avenue. Staff has provided a pre-approval conditional letter, which does request some modifications, just minor in nature. For example, you see here, the applicant has shown street trees up along the curb with the sidewalk off the curb. The existing conditions, however, show the sidewalk actually along the curb. So just requesting that those street trees as shown be shown back along the property itself rather than here. So just reversing those 2. Again, should not be an issue. There should be room and availability to place those street trees. With that, again, we do have a couple elevations. These were in your packet as well. Shows the mix of materials, including some masonry along the front. Again, some variation in roof line and window types and location of all the doors as well, shown here on the elevation. So with that, no additional comments from staff, but I'll certainly answer your questions should you have any. Thank you.
Any questions? Commissioner Peterson.
I made the mistake of driving in there. It's pretty rough, which means I had to drive back out.
Oh, okay.
So, is there legal access for those properties off of Water Street to 9th Avenue? Are there cross easements?
Yes, when that site plan for this parking lot was approved
Yeah.
years ago, there was a requirement that they get easements from these other properties.
Okay.
So I believe they have.
Even though it might be 16 or 15 feet wide, but it's, the parking's tight in there
Yes.
with those cars there. Okay. And secondly, are we requiring any bike racks for these duplexes or fourplexes?
That's a good question. Is that, yes? Yes. I was
Okay.
just instructed to say, yes,
right.
indeed. That would be required as a part of this as well, in addition to the 13 parking stalls, yes.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Weld.
Thank you, Commission President. Back to the easements, and forgive me, but I thought in the past it was always part of the recommendations that the cross easement would also be provided, or do we have that cross easement already for the gaining access to the building itself?
I believe that's already existing, is that correct? Along here? Oh, okay. We don't know, but that will be
And again, in the
part.
past, it was always a condition that be provided, that easement and the language that's specified.
Oh, owns all, that's right, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. The applicant owns the access through this area. So a
Yep.
specific easement is not necessarily required because it's all under
The
one
applicant
ownership.
owns
Right,
the back portion of it.
exactly, so.
Okay.
That's the difference here. That's a very good question, but that's the
Okay.
difference in this case.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Allen, is there any requirement for a certain percentage of green space? I understand that, we increased our parking requirements recently for these types of buildings, so unfortunately, there's a lot of paved space here. So I don't know if you're aware of any requirement of green space.
Mr. Chairman and Councilmember Gregor, in terms of that, you are requesting that a condition be placed that engineering department would approve drainage calculations and drainage plan, so that could play into some potential green space calculations, but primarily in these cases, again, we're looking at the streetscape in particular, which they do provide the minimum on the front along Menominee Street, including the street trees, which again will be moving. So the site plan itself is a little bit lacking in green space, even though it will be in actuality having more green space than what you're even seeing here, because the sidewalk is actually up along the curb and the rest of this will be green space behind that. Am I saying that right, Mr. Petrie? Thank you. So the green space that you do see here is meets or exceeds the minimum.
Any additional questions? I don't see any.
Okay, thank you.
Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Evening.
Anything to add, or?
Not-
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. First, name and address.
James Robecki, 3448 Trimble Street, Eau Claire, 54701.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add? No?
Not unless there's some questions.
Any questions? Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Rebecca, any concerns about the conditions placed on by staff in the letter?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, so if anybody would like to come forward to ask questions or make comments, feel free. Not seeing any. Going once, going twice. All right. So we're looking for a motion. Yes.
Thank you. I would move approval with staff recommendations.
Ms. Peterson.
Does that include the addition of the bike rack?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second it.
All All right, we got a motion and a second. Any comments? All right, not seeing any. Let's call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I don't see any. Motion carries. Congrats. Good luck. All right. Next up, we've got for approval, site plan of office at 623 East Claremont.
Good
Mr.
evening.
Petrie.
The old Papa John site is prone to for redevelopment. It's located at 623 East Claremont Avenue. Attached in your packet is the site plan building elevation for the project. The site plan is showing a 2,236 square foot office building. My understanding is used for medical office. Here's an elevation showing the new proposed building. The existing building will be demolished. Here's the current site. Access through here on May Street and Lexington Boulevard to the south. Going back to the site plan, they're adding a significant amount of green space, in particular to the south and north. They're adding street trees along Lexington Boulevard. To the north, there'll be a greened area with bicycle racks and foundation plantings. The required parking for the site is 12 stalls. The site plan does show 16 stalls. Again, a 4-stall bike rack is provided. A sidewalk is shown around the building and connecting to the existing sidewalk on Lexington. All signs shall meet C2 district standards. In the engineering report, it is a condition noted. The width of the existing curb cut on May Street is 47 feet. You shall review that. Plan Commission should approve it if it's over 30 feet. Also, in addition to the engineering report, they're recommending removal of the Lexington Boulevard curb cut here, the existing one. This aerial shows it a little better. They note that it is significantly close to the intersection. So if the Plan Commission would approve this, there's a few conditions that need to be met. City engineer approval of the grading plan, removal of the existing driveway onto Lexington Boulevard, and again, the Plan Commission approval of the 47-foot wide northern driveway. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions for Petrie? I'm not seeing any. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Peterson.
You've been drumming this into my head for 4 years now. Is there any requirement for bike parking at this facility?
Yes, this is a new facility since they're demolishing the existing Papa John's building, so yes, it would be.
Okay, so I think we should add that in too.
Oh, it is, it's noted.
It is?
They're showing right there. Oh, it's not in the letter, but it's in the staff report, so that won't be a condition.
Okay. Any additional questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. All right, is the applicant here? Mr. Majeski? Name and
Hi.
address, please?
Rob, excuse me, Rob Majeski, 415 Roosevelt Avenue, Eau Claire.
Anything you'd like to add?
No.
All right, anybody, questions for the applicant? Not seeing any, but any concerns with recommendations or?
No, I think there's, the access onto Lexington is certainly unnecessary with 3 ways into the property. There's a relocation from Stein Boulevard, the doctor that will be putting in this building. So 1 patient an hour, give or take, should be pretty low density for the corner and certainly a monumental improvement once it's done. So should fit in very nicely with that strip of offices along there.
All right, excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions? Sorry. All right, not seeing any. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody that has any questions or would like to make any comments, feel free to come forward. This is a public hearing. I'm not seeing anybody. So we are looking for a motion.
I move for approval with the staff recommendations.
All right, second.
Second.
All right. right, so we got a motion and a second. Any comments? Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just did want to note that at the Putnam Heights Neighborhood Association annual meeting, I believe last week, there was a question about what was the future of the Papa John's. So we'll be able to answer that question very soon. So I just wanted to mention it was talk in the neighborhood. So.
Yeah, excellent. Any, I don't see any comments, so we're looking, all right, I'm sorry, calling the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I don't see any, so it is approved. Congratulations. Next on the agenda, we've got for approval, master sign plan, multi-tenant building, 222 Water Street. Mr. Petrie.
Good evening again. Sign art is representing the owners of 222 Water Street. This is the Mogensen building with the residential above for the university. The purpose of a sign plan is to provide information on sign design, size, location, and illumination to ensure compatibility between the signs and with the building. The majority of these building, as noted here, shown on your screen, could be up to 10 tenants. 4 have signed officially, according to John Mogensen, with potential less tenants than that. But the applicant would like to have flexibility within the sign plan to allow for up to 10. That's why there's 10 shown. The type of signs we'll get into in a little bit. They are proposing a pole sign as well. It's a little hard to see on your packet, but they are proposing the pole sign to be on the corner of 3rd Ave and Water Street. This is side elevation. The 2 end tenants would be allowed additional sign. And then potentially that's a projecting sign. Again, the applicant would like to have flexibility to allow for signage. The signage could be awning sign, a typical wall sign, or a projecting sign, which could be illuminated or non-illuminated. Projecting sign shall be limited to 20 square feet. Staff is recommending that it doesn't extend more than 5 feet out onto Water Street. Like I mentioned before, 4 tenants have officially signed. I have seen personally one of the tenant signs for BMO Harris. It's on the end along 3rd Avenue. They are inconsistent with this plan. The sign code does state in there for multi-tenant buildings shall be placed along the frontage of the leasable space. 2 of the tenants in the interior of the building, these 2 tenants do share a common entry. The rest of the tenants would have their own doors. My understanding is the end unit down here does not have a door, but if that was to be subdivided off, they would put a door in there. The Plan Commission shall review this and consistent with the sign code and the sign plan. I mentioned before, the ground sign is consistent with CBD standards, which is the zoning of the parcel. A parking lot sign would be allowed to be added to the existing entrance and exits. All signs will be reviewed with a sign permit and shall meet the district standards. If the Plan Commission does approve the plan, we do have some conditions. As noted, the 2 end tenants would be allowed 1 additional sign, as shown here. The projecting sign shall be internally lit and shall not extend more than 5 feet from the building. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Gregor. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Granold.
So they're proposing that the tenants be allowed the option between an awning and a facing sign or a blade type sign, so that it's any combination of a total of 10 tenants with a combination of these signs.
That is correct.
Not that they're all for one or all for all.
Correct.
It's any tenant has the option for the signs of these types for the specific locations.
That is correct.
Mr. Petrie, follow up on that. So a blank awning wouldn't be considered a sign, though, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So it would be, blend that in, and it wouldn't be part of the sign
I would
requirement.
note that some of the tenants would have short frontage along Water Street, so it may not be an option.
And you mentioned BMO was coming in, and I couldn't tell if you said their sign package was consistent or inconsistent.
It is consistent. They may need to make one modification.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Well.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not sure if this is for you or for Mr. Ivory, but is the plan, the sign plan for this building and allowing them the option of having the variety of choices with signage consistent with what we did with the Haymarket building? I mean, did they have that same option?
I believe so. Mr. Ivory might remember. He's a little older than me, though.
It's similar to Haymarket, except with that sign plan, there was not the option of an awning sign. They had the option of a flat wall sign and actually then a projecting sign too, so they actually could have both. In this case, the sign plan is limiting each tenant to just one sign. So it's a little bit different there, but with Haymarket, awning signs were not permitted.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Good evening.
Name and address, please.
Matt Snyder, 1035 Thompson Drive, Altoona.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, or?
Well, I guess I have a question for Ryan. Ryan, in the analysis here, it's indicating that tenant wall signs as shown will be 3 by 10 or 30 square feet. And I guess, is that a condition of the approval of the sign plan, or is that just a note based off the drawings? And I guess when I submitted this, with my cover letter, I was asking that code allows and determines the area of the signage allowed. I guess these sign drawings are just generic based off placement and in construction standards.
Okay. As shown, they are 30 square feet. Now, they would be allowed to be 2.5 square feet of linear foot of frontage. The Plan Commission can rule either way. We would like to have some clarification, though.
Okay, so I guess.
I guess my intent when I had submitted this and I wrote it was for it to be consistent with sign code for a CBD zoning at 2.5 square feet per linear foot of building space. For instance, on the west elevation where BMO Harris will have the side elevation there, they've got 102 feet of linear space there at that tenant spot. So, to limit that to a 30 square foot sign, I think is pretty restrictive given the amount of wall area that is there.
Okay. Commissioner Peterson.
But they are allowed 2 signs, one on Water Street and one on Third Avenue, correct?
Correct.
So they get 2 signs?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Ryan and Pat, how do you guys want to handle the language here?
It's interesting. You could go with the 30 square feet as proposed, or you can leave it up to the sign code, which is 2.5 square feet per linear foot. Meaning if you have 25 feet of frontage, you would be allowed a 50 square foot sign. Now, you may want to add a condition though on the side tenant, if 102 feet, that would be 250 square foot sign. I don't think that would be appropriate for Water Street.
It would be kind of impressive, wouldn't it?
I guess I understand the purpose to have uniformity here, inconsistent with new multi-tenant occupancies. But I think that those tenants should have the ability to have a sign, as large as what code would allow. I guess, it's kind of confusing on our end of things as, what is the city after here? I mean, I understand that we want a uniformity in the construction, design, and illumination of signage, but to restrict it far beyond what code states, I mean, I think that's kind of taking the master sign plan to a level I think it wasn't intended to be.
I know Pat wants to chime in. Do we want to finish up with Mr. Schneider first and then bring Pat up second? Let's do that. So if there's any questions from the applicant? Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I guess my question kind of relates to what you were bringing up. Do you have a concern that we're going to have a brand-new multi-use building along the street with a hodgepodge of different size signs in front of it, above the tenants?
Well, I wouldn't call it a hodgepodge. I mean, with the cornice brickwork on that building, it's going to make signage difficult. I mean, so what we've come up with is the construction of a non-illuminated sign, which would basically amount to individual letters on an aluminum background panel. Illuminated letters on an aluminum background panel, whether they're face or reverse lit, a projecting sign or an awning. So, the illuminated signage, that'll be wall signage on the building. The construction's basically the same. It's just if the letter's, deeper in depth and illuminated or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional questions? Oh, yes, Mr. Granlund. Thank you.
At 2.5 square feet per linear foot of building, a 30-inch tall sign would run the entire length. We'd have a continuous sign across the entire thing, 2.5 feet high. I think that going for the full limit is a lot of signage on this building for the separate tenants. I think something in between is going to need to be the guiding point of the extent of the signage.
Sure.
But I think you're right, there is something other than the fact that you showed, demonstrated that the 30 square feet of signage looks very appropriate for the number of entrances on this face. It may be a little light for the two ends as a result, but I think that this is really close to what looks like a reasonable outcome for the Menominee Street side overall.
And I know Mr. Ivory is looking to chime in here, so maybe if anybody has any more questions, we could bring up Pat. I don't see any. Pat, would you like to weigh in a little bit too, please?
Yeah, I think the 30 square feet, 30 square feet, we can vary that somewhat in terms of allow for a larger sign than that. I think the key is the placement of the signs along the front of Water Street, and then the height of that back panel. I think that needs to be consistent. If they're proposing 2.5 feet or 3 feet or whatever it is, that height should be consistent along for each of those signs in terms of that back panel where the signs are mounted on, so that as you're looking up or down Water Street, you're seeing consistency that way. So the sizes could probably vary a little bit. We did anticipate that what's shown here is the maximum number of signs that potentially could be on this building, and we don't envision that there's going to be that many tenants here. We think that there's going to be more larger tenants in here that'll be taking up fewer signs essentially. So I guess I see the placement along here is the key in terms of along here in terms of height, and then they've already indicated that in terms of the top of these signs that there's a maximum height that they can go because of the residences on the second floor here. So if they keep the top of those signs in line and the bottom in line, I think that would be good.
Okay. So if we did if there was a motion that generally approved the location, the signage options, and then dictated that they must be consistent with code signage, is that appropriate and acceptable?
Consistent height.
Yeah. Consistent height as well.
Consistent height, that's what I heard Ed say.
And consider, general location consistent with that plan? Does that fair, Pat? Am I saying that right? So if we had a motion that said the general location on the building the options that were kind of laid out and then dictate that it's consistent with code?
Well, in a consistent height of each
And consistent
sign.
height. Commissioner Peterson.
I have a question for Pat. Pat, with the 2.5 feet of sign per linear foot, is, when it's a multi-sided building, that allows all the sides? So in other words, the front side and the side are allowed the 2.5 feet per linear foot?
Right, well.
2.5 square feet per linear foot.
So for the front elevation here, if you have a tenant here that happens to have, well, say 20 square feet of frontage here, then they could have up to 2.5 times 20 square feet. That would be the maximum that they could have
50
there.
square feet.
Mm-hmm. And then on the side elevation, in theory, on the side elevation, then you take this full width of the building here, multiply it times 2.5 square feet. That would be the maximum that they could have up to 250 square feet, but I just don't envision that that's going to happen on this building here.
Facetiously, could they have a sign in the rear too, since that's?
No,
that's-
according to the sign plan here, what's being allowed is one sign on the west end cap, one on the east end cap, and then on the front, then they're allowed just one on the front here. So, and I guess I was referring to the question back to the Haymarket Plaza in terms of number of signs. This plan actually is more restrictive than Haymarket Plaza because, as I mentioned there, they could have both a wall sign and a projecting sign here, but this sign plan is saying they can just have one sign along the Water Street side, so it's actually more restrictive in terms of number of signs.
Yeah, I personally don't see that they're going to do a sign for the entire site length unless they spell out what B stands for and M stands for and O stands for and BMO Harris. But I think they're going to keep it reasonable. But
What we've seen on a temporary basis or a cursory basis for BMO Harris, it's a fairly small sign that would be on that west elevation.
are they limited to just the name of the business as opposed to other extraneous?
Yeah, these would be identification signs.
Strictly?
Yep.
So I just don't see them using the whole side of the building, but I want to be reasonable, but I don't want to allow them to.
And again, on the end caps here, they're limited to the first floor. They can't put any
Yep.
signs up above that, from the second floor up. So they're restricted to basically, there's just a small decorative band on the building that is about 2 to 2.5 feet. So they're limited to that band in terms of where any of that signage can be, both on the ends and on the front. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Schneider.
I just would like to show you one thing. I know it was important with to Investment Realty that we kind of modeled this around what BMO's sign package was. And this is what they're proposing on that west side elevation as far as the wall sign here. They had also proposed a projecting sign here on the staff recommendation, I believe, is to eliminate that sign. But, you know, we're talking 60 square feet here. We're not talking anything, you know, enormous or filling that whole side elevation with signage, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Could you zoom that in a little closer? What is that dimension of the sign?
It's 4 feet.
The length. Yeah.
14'9", call it 15 feet.
So the height here is 2 feet, 3 inches or about 2 feet.
It'd actually be the 4 feet here.
Oh, the 4 feet right here.
Yep.
So that 4 foot fits in the decorative band that you're referring to?
Well, I know we have 16 feet to where investment realty space ends there, to where it becomes the second floor. So I know that there's enough space there between the lower windows and where that 16 feet starts, but I believe that may extend larger than what that cornice band is.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any additional questions? Commissioner Peterson?
If we're looking at limiting the front signs to 30 square feet, could we limit the two side signs to 60 square feet? Which would meet what you're proposing and would probably work for the other end of the building too.
It's rumored that there's a grocery store going in at the other end. I have a feeling they may want a bigger sign on the side where the parking lot is, but that's speculation.
Okay.
So it may not work at both ends.
You know, I don't think they're going to go crazy with signs on the entire length. I think, you know, they want the building to look good, they're going to be in there, so, okay.
Commissioner Weld?
Yeah, I think we were proposing, though, not limiting it to 30 square feet on the front, correct? Just, we were going to put a restriction on, so the height is consistent, but the width could be, as long as it didn't exceed what's acceptable by code, it could exceed that 30 square feet, so.
And to that point, I think the question is, do we approve what was submitted, or do we make a motion for something different? So I think that's something we've got to probably make a choice on. To see what's. Mr. Snyder, do you think that would work if we limit it to 60 on the ends, and if they needed to come back for a bigger sign, then I guess that'd be another plan commission meeting.
I think to amend the sign plan, I think, you know, I can see where Pat's coming from with the height. If maybe we have a uniformity in height, maybe give that tenant the ability to grow in length for that space. You know, a smaller space, let's say they have 20 feet of frontage, or we have somebody with 40 feet of frontage. I think the 40 feet of frontage should certainly be allowed a larger sign.
Okay. Any additional questions, applicant? Okay. And this is a public hearing, so should probably open it up, see if there's any questions from the public. And I don't see anybody else here, so maybe we should take a shot at a motion. Anybody like to speak? Go ahead.
Okay, I'll take a flyer at this thing. I would move approval based upon staff recommendations with the amendment that the signs in the front need to be a uniform height.
Okay.
Does that get us where we want to be?
And size not to exceed.
Size not to exceed code.
Okay. We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, but do we want to check with Pat and see if that motion works?
Okay. Well, it's a motion and a second, and Pat, could you chime in on that, please?
So what you're recommending then is on the front elevation that these signs be basically a uniform height.
Uniform height.
But length can vary in terms of a larger size based on code and tenant space. That makes sense. That'd be fine.
Okay.
And no, on the end caps I'm sorry, Commissioner Peterson.
One more question. Per code in the front, it's 2.5 feet, 2.5 square feet of signage per linear foot then?
Per tenant.
Is what meet the code, okay.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Granlund.
Did we indicate that there were some tenants that don't have direct frontage, that we also need to allow them to participate in the signage?
I think that's covered in the sign plan. I think Ryan had mentioned.
Because we were starting to divide up the frontage
Right
and
here.
give them frontage.
Yeah, actually, the tenants have frontage on Water Street, just that they share a front door essentially.
Okay.
So that would be a tenant space here and possibly here. So that's covered in the sign plan.
We've had other areas where we had hidden tenants.
Yeah, actually, your next item will be that type of a situation.
Okay. Commissioner Peterson.
And the sign plan also includes the pole sign?
Correct.
In the southwest corner of the property?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? All right, let's call the vote here. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion is approved. Congratulations. Oh, yeah, number 9, another for approval, master sign plan, multi-tenant building, 515 South Barstow Street.
Hopefully this one's a little more clear. This is a multi-tenant building that has a common doorway, which we just mentioned. There's currently 7 tenants in there, in the facility. Again, the purpose of a sign plan is the sign design, size, location, height, all things that we've gone over with the last one. This is a significantly different building, though, as they have 2 tenants facing South Barstow Street. Currently, those 2 have window signs as noted on this elevation. Also, this is on a corner, so the Lake Street, there is an awning sign existing that actually has direct access into that tenant space. That sign would be staying with the proposal. Attached in your packet is a narrative, sign examples, sign locations. This is a multi-tenant building with first floor commercial, zone central business zoning. Currently, there's 7 tenants in the building. The linear foot along Barstow Street is 58 feet. Potentially, there'd be 6 tenants here. We are eliminating this to 21 square feet as shown. And the height would be 3 feet as shown, and the length would be 7 feet. That is the recommendation of staff. Again, currently, there's 1 tenant entrance onto Lake Street. That sign would be staying with the proposal. That would be the only awning sign proposed and the only sign along Lake Street. This one's a little different. As mentioned, there's 1 entrance door with a common hallway with tenants on both sides. Some of those tenants do not have road frontage. The sign code may allow for the Plan Commission to approve a sign for the building with the tenants not having exterior wall space or exterior frontage. Historically, however, the building has only had a common name, as you know. This is from Google Maps. Used to be called the Professional Building. That sign has been removed. In the past, tenants located interior of the buildings have not been allowed individual signs as proposed. Rather, a directory sign has been permitted. Staff would be a little concerned about sign clutter created by the proposed plan and would support a sign for each of the 2 tenants facing Barstow with a directory sign on Lake Street. However, if the Plan Commission does approve the sign plan as proposed, it should be conditioned that the existing awning be the only sign permitted on Lake Street. The signs along South Barstow Street be 21 square feet, 3 feet in height, 7 feet in length for each tenant with similar spacing. This could be illuminated or non-illuminated. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Petrie? Commissioner Peterson?
So the staff recommendation, if we were to allow the 6 signs on Barstow Street, you would not allow a pole sign on Lake? Or you would still allow a
No
directory
pole
sign?
sign, no monument sign,
No directory
no
sign?
free sign, correct. But if you don't go with those recommendations, then we would recommend a directory sign on Lake Street and the 2 tenants facing South Barstow Street to have a sign on that wall.
In addition, Commissioner Ebert?
Are any of the tenant spaces located upstairs, or are they all on the first floor?
My understanding is it's residential above.
Okay.
The first floor is all commercial with a long hallway with 7 tenants as you walk on either side of the hallway.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. Yeah, I don't see any. Thank you. Is the applicant here?
I am.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
It's been a while. Anything you'd like to add?
I think everybody's on board with these being 21 square feet each, so I think we have to go over that again, but I think they're just trying to give every tenant some street exposure here, so.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Peterson?
That would be your client's preference then, as opposed to the two Barstow-facing businesses, each having a sign on Barstow Street and then a directory sign for the other four.
Correct. The preference of Investment Realty here is to have each tenant have their own sign, to have sign frontage or visible on Barstow Street.
And no directory?
And no directory,
on
correct.
Lake Street, okay.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Larson?
Do you know if these signs will be illuminated?
There's an option to have them be illuminated or non-illuminated.
Okay. Depending on what the tenant wants.
Correct. The construction that we've drawn here is similar to the Water Street, the 222 we went over. I'd be an aluminum background panel, which would typically be about 1.5 inch raised panel with either illuminated letters mounted to it or non-illuminated letters mounted to it.
Continue.
I'm just surprised that, I don't know, it doesn't, I don't want to get too picky about it, but this doesn't look as good as the one on Water Street where there's an entrance and a sign above it, and an entrance and a sign above it. I think the directory sign would be a better option, but I'm surprised that they would want that many signs on the front.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to give their tenants an option to have an exterior sign.
Commissioner?
Thank you. So is it possible that there would only be 3 signs out there, or is it automatic if this gets approved, there will be the 6 signs? I mean,
I don't think that if this gets approved, there's going to be 6 signs going up right away. I mean, it'd give them the ability to do that, but as of right now, only on the Lake Street elevation is there anybody that currently has an exterior sign. I don't know what the demand is from the tenants there, but.
because they would have to pay for them, right?
Correct.
And they may not want to.
Correct.
Right. So it's possible we may only see 2 signs out there.
Very possible, yes.
And they would be the square footage indicated.
Yes.
Yes.
To allow for a possible additional tenant sign in the future.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Peterson?
So there's one set of doors on Barstow Street?
Correct.
Correct. And one set of doors on Lake Street?
I believe so.
There may be a service entrance in back, but one business public entrance.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, and that's the only tenant that comes off of State Street?
Lake Street.
Or Lake Street, I'm sorry. And the other 6 come off of Barstow. So if we were to allow 2 signs on Barstow Street for only those that front Barstow Street and used a directory sign for the other 4, then the public might be led to believe that this door is only for the 2 that are on Barstow and the one is only for the person on Lake Street, and they're going to wonder, where do I get to the other 4? So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards the 6 that come in on Barstow Street.
I believe it's Barstow Street and the 100 block where Allstate is. They kind of have a sign package modeled similar to this, whereas I believe there's 3 or 4 tenants that have exterior wall signs with one public entry corridor.
Because to me, if this is the entrance for all 6 businesses, if there could be up to 6 businesses in there, then this would tell me that's the door I need to go in. And I think that's what signage is about. So, thank you.
Any additional, Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairperson. The style of the sign, I know you said it could either be illuminated or not, but otherwise it's pretty much up to the logo and the type of sign. It could be 6 completely different looking signs up there.
correct?
I guess, yes, the way it's written.
Okay.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. Thank you. This is a public hearing. I do not see anybody here, so we'll be looking for a motion.
I would move approval.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any conditions by staff? Excuse me. Well, I'm sorry, discussion. Anybody have comments? Commissioner Weld.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think I have some of the same concerns as Commissioner Larson. I'm not a big fan of 6 completely different signs. I understand they're going to be the same size, and there'll be some consistency with that, but it will seem out of place with that block, too. And really, I know the building that you're referring to on the 400 block that does have a few multiple signs, but I'm just not really thrilled by how that comes across, but open to hear what others have to say.
Additional, Commissioner Ebert.
I think it's important to remember that at this point, the other tenants that are in the building have not had any opportunity for exterior signage at all. So this will increase the probably tenant enhanceability of the building, because otherwise they've just been hidden in there.
Okay. Commissioner Randland.
I agree with what you're saying, and, but as far as to Commissioner Weld's point, can't we give them that visibility with a more consistent look on the sign? Rather than having the different, because I think that's where you're coming from, correct?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that would be really a lot to ask for each person to have the same sign, because they're all going to have a different logo and a different design, and so I don't know if that would be fair, but I feel it's not that big of a building, and to just have those 6 different signs, to me, it seems like a little overkill for that building, but I understand. I think the directory would also serve that purpose for the buildings that are or the businesses that are in back. Like I said, I'm not 100% sold yet.
Commissioner Larson.
Thank you. This is why sign discussion is my least favorite. Bless you for the business you're in. I don't mean to disparage your business or anything, but here's the dilemma, is that I think it has the real potential of kind of looking gaudy with 6 signs potentially lit, and but on the other hand, the businesses in the back there have a legitimate concern about people knowing, as Commissioner Peterson said, not only that they are there and they're open for business, but also how to get there and make sure that people aren't confused about which entrance to use and everything. So, even though I'm concerned about this, I want to be deferential to the businesses and their need for exposure. So I'll probably end up supporting it.
Commissioner Peterson.
I'm just trying to be consistent between what we did on Water Street and what we're doing here, in that we're allowing a number of businesses in that facade above the doorways, even though there's multiple doorways, that there's going to be as many signs on that building per linear foot as there is here. So I think I'm trying to be more consistent between the 2 properties. And again, if I wanted to go to the businesses, I'd sure like a sign to know which door I know the parking lot, the directory sign would give me the parking lot, but then which door do I go into if there's two signs in the front and one on the side, and I'm looking at one of the other four businesses? So I prefer the 6.
So we've got a motion, a second, we've had discussion. Should we do a rate? Do you want to see who's voting which way? So we're voting on the plan we see ahead of us here, I believe, right? Okay. So all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Oh, looks like we have support. Thanks. Congratulations. All right. What do we got? We've got update on bicycle and pedestrian plan, discussion and direction.
That'll be Mr. Ivory give a presentation. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to give your? Mr. Ivory is with us to handle this item. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
The engineering department and planning staff have been working on an update of the bicycle and pedestrian plan from 2010. We briefly discussed this with the Plan Commission back on April 2nd, and after we discussed it for a little bit, the Commission asked for some additional time to review the plan, and then we would bring it back at a future meeting. So this is that meeting. This is not a public hearing tonight, it's just a discussion. We're at a point where we've prepared a draft, we've gotten public input on the draft, and we'll be taking this back to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee probably tomorrow night for some additional comments and some kind of tweaking of the language. And then we anticipate bringing this forward as a public hearing probably in a month or so. This is actually is an element of the comprehensive plan, so it does need to go through formal public hearing procedure, so we'll be doing that at a later date. But we wanted to bring this forward to the Plan Commission back in April and tonight, just to see if there's any particular items that the Commission noted that you feel we need to work a little harder on with the language, or if we missed something before we go forward with the public hearing. So when we come forward with the public hearing, it's something that generally that the Commission is somewhat comfortable with. The plan, as I mentioned, will update the 2010 plan, and a number of things have happened in 8 years since the 2010 plan was put together. We did update our comprehensive plan in 2015. So this plan that we're talking about tonight does build upon the neighborhood focus that we had within the comprehensive plan for 2015. Also, there's been a strong movement in healthy communities policies over in the last 5 years or so in terms of encouraging more active residents and people to get out and things like that. So we're trying to build upon that in this plan. Encouraging more sustainable modes of travel. That's been something that's really come of age in the last 5 or 6 years also. Providing viable alternatives to driving, encouraging walking and biking as a means of transportation. We're starting to see slight gains in modes of travel for people walking to work and biking to work, although in looking at census data, it's pretty marginal in terms of the increases that we're seeing. We're hoping that when the 2020 census comes out that we'll see a little bit more in terms of gains, in terms of people that are walking to work or people that are biking to work. With the resurgence of the older neighborhoods, we anticipate that as more people are living within the older neighborhoods, if they're closer to downtown, that they'll be walking and biking to those locations downtown. And then the plan also discusses equity issues in terms of not everybody can afford to have a vehicle, or maybe they choose not to have a vehicle. So we need to provide the opportunities or the infrastructure for people to be able to walk to work, walk to where they do their shopping, or to bike to work or bike to where they do their shopping. So those are some of the kind of the recurring themes within this plan. And it's really not a lot different from 2010. We're just trying to probably emphasize those areas a little bit more. The plan itself is divided into these particular sections here. We did update the terms of what's happened over the last 8 years. We did an update of the current bicycle and pedestrian environment within the city in terms of the number of improvements that have occurred within the city. I won't go through those in detail, but in the background introductory section, I think we have 3 to 4 pages of improvements that have occurred within the city of Eau Claire in terms of pedestrian environment and bicycling environment. Provides an overview of the issues and concerns, the plans and objectives. We did a little bit of update of those within the plan. And the recommendations fall into 3 sections: one, planning and engineering related, education and encouragement, and then enforcement. The actual recommendations are pretty similar to what was contained in the 2010 plan, with a few changes and tweaking of some of the narrative. And then the last section is what we refer to areas requiring detailed study, and we found that we identified 27 areas within the city where within the plan we provide a fairly detailed review and analysis of the pedestrian and bicycle environment within those areas, and then identify some possible solutions or suggestions for those areas. And those areas would come up for consideration as the city goes in and reconstructs the streets in those areas. So an example would be Jeffers Road. We talked about Jeffers Road a couple of months ago when we had the new subdivision come in up on the north side of Jeffers Road. And we have the softball complex, that's the Jeffers Road complex that's up there, and the Miracle Field up by County Line Road. So we're looking at the reconstruction of Jeffers Road in 2020. So what this plan does is identifies that is an issue along Jeffers Road, that we need to take a look at pedestrians and bicyclists along that area. It gives some suggestions, so kind of as a starting point. So when we go to reconstruct Jeffers Road, this is kind of give our kind of a starting point for that particular area. So there's 26 other areas in there in terms of what we identified certain issues. The plan itself focuses on encouraging and promoting walking and bicycling as a safe and convenient alternative to using the vehicle. It identifies gaps in the pedestrian network and then continues to develop the bicycle network. I have a couple examples. This is one of the maps, and the colors don't show up really well, but this is a map that identifies some of the major pedestrian gaps that we should be taking a look at. And for example, over by the Wells area, in terms of that there is no real sidewalk system up in this area. This is an area, as the streets are reconstructed, we should take a look at. Or again, Jeffers Road, County Line Road, these are all identified as areas that we need to take a look at, trying to provide better pedestrian systems as we go forward. And then we have a similar map then for the south side of the city, and identifying pedestrian gaps in this area. For example, over by Robbins School along Hamilton Avenue here, real problem area there with no sidewalks there. The council just looked at that area over by Keith and Taft area here, and that was identified as a pedestrian gap. We'll probably, council did wind up approving sidewalk for that, so we'll probably actually be removing that in the final draft. In terms of bicycles, the plan also sets out a bicycle route network within the city. This is from the 2010 plan. We basically took a look at this in terms of the engineering staff and planning staff, and then working with the BPAC, or the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, in terms of identifying. What we have gone to with this proposal is a kind of a 2-tier system, and we're dividing the routes into what we've referred to as a primary route or a regional route, and then the neighborhood routes. And this kind of dovetails with the comprehensive plan, where we're trying to focus a little bit more in the neighborhood areas. We've been working So the darker lines here are the primary or the regional routes, and then the red lines are more the neighborhood routes. The goal is generally, again, to provide a network for pedestrians and bicyclists is to look at where the destination points are in terms of the schools and the major shopping areas and things like that in order to provide some kind of access to all those areas. So that's kind of the goal of what we looked at. We have been working with the West Central Regional Planning Commission in what we refer to as the primary routes or the regional routes. We've been working, the West Central Regional Planning Commission has been coordinating this, and the colors don't show up very well on the map here, but we've been working with the city of Altoona, the village of Lake Hallie, and then Chippewa Falls, and actually putting together a regional bicycle route system, and that's what this is shown here. So the routes shown here within the city would be the same as the primary routes right here. So this map corresponds with just the city map. What we're looking at doing is patterning this after a system that's been developed in Wausau, where they actually wind up numbering these routes and then will sign these routes on a numbered basis. So for example, the main trail system that goes through the city of Eau Claire here, this will be route number 1 probably is what we'll do, and it'll be signed route number 1. This is actually a green line here, doesn't show up on this line here going from west to east, goes across the south side of the city and gets over to the mall area, and then eventually goes back up and connects up with Altoona. So this route would be numbered 2. Would be numbered a number with signage. So if someone wanted to follow Route 5 or something like that, then they would be able to follow this route over to get to the mall. Or Route 1 would be able to get you all the way up to Chippewa Falls. So we've been doing that. We've been working with West Central and the various jurisdictions in order to come up with that system. So that's kind of one of the key things that is coming out of the update here is that regional system, and then providing the neighborhood routes that are in here. A lot of these routes that are shown here, we've already provided some of the infrastructure over the last 8 years with the addition of some additional bike paths and the additional bike lanes, and then some of the streets that have some of the sharrows on it. So this system here is already kind of in the works of being developed, essentially. We've tried to get as much public input as we can as we've gone forward with this. Last year during Bike Week, we had kind of several open houses where we had people come in and give us comments. We posted the plan on our city website during the fall of last year, and we received 60 or about 40 or 50 comments. We've had a number of discussions with the BPAC Commission to get their feedback on this. And then the plan, again, is posted on our city website. It's been on our website for another month and a half right now, and we've gotten some comments. Most of the comments have been quite positive in terms of some suggestions. The one comment that we had gotten that noted some concern was from the Chippewa Valley Home Builders. We do have a recommendation in the plan that identifies an issue regarding the construction of sidewalks in new subdivisions. Our current policy for construction of sidewalks is that sidewalks are constructed when a home is built. So what winds up happening in some of the older subdivisions is where you have a vacant lot, you wind up having no sidewalks, so you have gaps in the sidewalk system. So that was identified as an issue. And what the plan indicates is that we should sit down and take a look at that policy and try to decide if there's some way of resolving that where we don't have those gaps. And the Chippewa Valley Home Builders indicated that they prefer to keep the current policy and not change that. So essentially sidewalks to be built when the home is built. What BPAC discussed at our last meeting when we talked about this concern, and again, this would be something we talk about at a later date. This is basically just identifying this as an issue in the plan. But some possible suggestions is that we do recognize the home builder's concerns about putting the sidewalk in initially, because in some cases, the owner of the lot doesn't necessarily know where the garage is going to be, so that would relate to where the curb cut's going to be. In addition, where the curb cut's going to be, normally the sidewalk is a thicker, more concrete versus the other part of the sidewalk. So we see that the recommendation would not be to just build sidewalk immediately, but possibly take a look at a couple options. One would be is that when a subdivision is built out to a certain percentage, and we haven't determined what that would be, whether it be 60%, 70%, whatever, is that maybe at that point we go back and look at those vacant lots and have a sidewalk put in. Another option would be just after a certain length of time, after 5 years or something like that, that we would go back and put that sidewalk in. So anyway, that was the issue that was raised by the home builders, and it's a valid issue, and we want to address that appropriately in the plan, but we do feel it needs to be kept in the plan as an identified issue, and that we need to look at that in the future. So with that, that's kind of a real quick overview of some of the, and I don't want to get into go over each recommendation with the commission. I feel that you've probably had an opportunity to take a look at it, but if you have any suggestions or comments at this point.
Commissioner Hebert.
With the bicycle plan, and I have to confess that I did not know it was in there to print off and read, so I have not read through it. But you also have a section that identifies the most dangerous intersections for bikes versus cars versus pedestrians, the areas where there's real concern around the city.
Correct. We identified, that was part of the, where we took a look at the areas of further study. Most of those would be the areas where there are conflicts with pedestrians and bicycles, primarily with motorists.
Today, there just happened to be a report that was released by the state that said there was some concern on the state's part because there were 59 pedestrian deaths in the last year, and there were 47 the year before. So it's a trend that more and more pedestrians are getting killed in conflicts with vehicles. So that's why I happened to think of it.
Yeah, actually, in the plan, background information does recognize that the trend, unfortunately, is that we're seeing more and more pedestrian accidents and more pedestrian deaths, and not just clear on a national trend.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any real good explanation of why that's occurring, and the literature that I've seen hasn't really come up with that too. I mean, there's some possible reasons in terms of distracted drivers and even distracted walkers. You'll see people that are texting while they're walking and run into a building or something like that. But the trend is troubling, and we do recognize that in the plan.
Okay. The only other comment I wanted to make was that with the home builders and putting the sidewalk in before a house is built, I can see many instances where there'd be a sidewalk, and the first thing you'd have to do when you started to build on the lot is remove it. Because you'd have the stub in for the water and sewer lines, and you don't know where the house is going to go, and I don't think you necessarily want all that heavy equipment going in and out over that sidewalk.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be smart to defer the sidewalks until the houses go in to avoid a double expense. A sidewalk before the house and a sidewalk after the house.
Although I think I guess what BPAC is saying is that at some point within a subdivision, there may be a lot or two that haven't been developed for some reason, and there isn't sidewalk there, and that maybe at some point, and I don't know what that is that maybe that sidewalk does need to go in.
And I'd say maybe at 90% or after 10 years
Yeah.
would be probably
Yeah.
reasonable.
And that's something that we would look at. It's not really going to be a specific recommendation in this plan. Essentially, the plan says we should study it further.
Yeah. Well, then the other thing is, because this is Wisconsin, is if we have sidewalks and we don't really have property owners, who's going to go out and shovel those random sidewalks during the winter?
Well, the property owner does. So,
But if he's a developer and he owns 25 lots and scattered sites, I can kind of guarantee that he's probably not going to do it.
well, that's the cost of doing business.
Commissioner Seymour?
No, that, you
Okay,
just
all right.
touched on my point, the shoveling, but it sounds like the developer would have to take care of it.
Yeah. Pat, you mentioned Hamilton Avenue. I can tell you that that's pretty dangerous. I just left the ball field there a little bit ago. Kids bike to the ball fields, and I walk there every night, and especially at night, it's, I'm walking in the cemetery just to make sure I'm not in the wrong spot.
Which area is that?
Right now, near Robbins,
Yes.
Hamilton, and
Yep.
by Robbins, yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
That's just a personal comment there. Any other comments? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ivory, for all your work on this. I've obviously sat in on a number of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee meetings working on this, and it has been a few years, I think, because so much has changed and so many new ideas have emerged on the national level, as well as just a lot of local ambition on this issue. So I appreciate a lot of that being reflected here in this document. And one area that I was wondering if it could be fleshed out a little bit more, and it may be more so just in the map section. I believe it's on page 39 and 40 where you have major sidewalk and pathway gaps. I noticed there's some inconsistency with regard to how the town areas are treated with regard to those gaps. And I like how when you go south on State Street or on Gulf Road or on Lowe's Creek Road, it shows where some of those gaps are for potentially for trails or sidewalks. But then in other parts, I think we could maybe be a bit more thorough in terms of looking out into the town, the different towns. And one of them would be like the Old Town Hall Road in the town of Washington. That seems like a good connection that would be good to reflect. And then also McKinley Road in the town of Seymour, where I understand it gets tricky where we're trying to work with the towns and with the county on some of those sidewalk or trail gaps. But it'd be, I think, a good thing to explore as part of this plan a little bit further.
We can certainly identify those areas, but being that they do come up in a different jurisdiction, we don't necessarily have any control over that. But in order for the map to show kind of where some of those areas are, we certainly can show them on a map.
That would be great. Yeah, and one thing just to note that I really appreciate about this plan that has really been expanded is that areas requiring further study, which starts on page 57, there may very well be some other areas. So if folks see some other problem areas that are maybe not reflected, that would be something I'd really encourage anyone from the public getting in touch about, because I know I suggested a number of those areas and they've all been reflected well in the plan. So I appreciate that.
And even though we identify only 27 areas, it doesn't mean that other areas, as the city goes in and reconstructs streets, we take a look at all of the different factors when we go in to reconstruct the streets. So we're just trying to here kind of identify some of the key areas. One of the other recommendations that's in the plan, that was in the 2010 plan that we're carrying forward, is to take a look at the possibility of some kind of a complete streets policy. And we've already, working with the BPAC committee, have reached out to some other organizations to see if there's interest in that. And then the team from Eau Claire that went to Decatur, that was another particular topic that they'll be working on or bringing forward to.
Any additional comments or questions? Commissioner Weld.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chairperson. Again, thank you for all the work and time you guys have put into this. And I think the city has really made an effort and a commitment to enhancing, both the bike riding and pedestrian amenities that again, continue to improve and grow. I think with that, as we continue to encourage more people to walk and more people to ride their bikes, that the education continues to be increased as well. The understanding of what's required in the laws, and so that there is that respect from both sides, from the motorist to the bicyclist, and the bicyclist to the motorist, and the pedestrians as well. So, and I see that's a big part of it already. I mean, they talk about the law enforcement education and enforcement programs, and trying to get different private groups to spearhead that education. But I think that, that's going to be part of our growth just as much as the physical commitment that we made as a city is. I mean, there is no requirements of a bike owner to understand the laws of being on the road with a bike, and not that we have to require that, but I think any additional education and programs that we can continue to offer and promote, I think, are a positive and will be appreciated by riders and by motorists. So, thank you.
Anybody else? So, Pat, are we looking for any kind of direction or recommendation, or just?
Just wanted to get feedback from the commission tonight, and based on what I'm hearing, I think we're pretty close to going forward and bringing back a draft for public hearing then.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So I guess that takes us code compliance items. Anybody? Jenny? Last chance, maybe?
No, nothing.
All right, future agenda items? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. It has been brought to my attention that tradition dictates a possible cancellation of the Planning Commission meeting on or around the July 4th holiday. So not necessarily requesting a decision at this point, but am curious if there are any potential conflicts at this point. July 4th is a Wednesday, so being midweek, it may not cause a conflict with vacations and such. But I wanted to mention it now because the next meeting here is not until June 4th. This is the second and final meeting of the month, believe it or not. But not until June 4th, and we do have some application deadlines that will occur actually before June 4th. So want to get some feedback. If everyone will be here, great. But if not, wanted to see if we could make a decision on canceling that meeting if need be. Thank you.
Boy, anybody, either way, I guess I'm expecting to be in town.
I'm going to be here.
We're talking July 4th.
July 2nd.
To be the 2nd, July 4th
July
week.
2nd.
Well, I guess if
So far, so good.
if there's agenda items, then I guess it
Okay.
looks like we'll have.
Thank you. We
quorum.
should know, again, we should actually know, hopefully by that June 4th meeting, if we will have the July 2nd meeting. So by our next meeting, we may already know the status of the agenda items for July 2nd. So thank you.
Excellent. All right. Any other agenda items? No. Additions or corrections to the minutes? Sir?
Started a agenda.
Oh, agenda item, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, so, I mean, one thought, I know that there's since our city hall is going to be no longer available starting in July, so I know that it's a staff decision as far as where we'll meet as an alternative location, but it'll likely be somewhere downtown. Is that correct? And maybe that's something we could discuss at a future meeting, or maybe you have a report on that.
Oh, sure. Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Rager, talking with City Manager Dale Peters, it is in the works for this commission as well as all the other boards, commissions, committees, to start working on where they may be meeting. There's some deference to the different groups in terms of where they prefer to meet, but staff is working on the best options based on the needs for each of those boards and committees. So all of that to say, I don't have an answer at this point, but it is something that I know City Manager, Mr. Solberg, City Engineer, also working on kind of location for not just staff, but also boards and commissions. So hopefully we'll have some more information, certainly for that June 4th meeting. So between now and then, watch for some suggestions, recommendations, and decisions, hopefully in that regard. If you do have some recommendations or suggestions in the meantime, certainly let me know. I can pass those along if there's a preference or suggestion, but we're kind of working on those behind the curtain, as it were, and hopefully have some ideas to share with everybody here shortly.
Okay, thanks. Additions or corrections? Anybody? All right, I guess that makes us adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.